All right, so we're going to move on from talking about campaigns and elections and start talking a little bit about political parties. So political parties are another one of those linkage institutions. So they are going to connect citizens with the government. So in having any kind of affiliation or belonging to a political party, you are connected to the government, okay? It's a way to kind of play a role in public policy. So a healthy party serves as a check on the opposition, promoting ideas and candidates that differ from the other party's positions. So a big role of political parties is to have that political agenda, okay? So trying to accomplish party policy goals. So some of the roles that political parties play: first, they are going to recruit, nominate, and support candidates for a political office. They are going to provide labels that voters can use as shortcuts in identifying candidates closer to their own political ideologies. And they enact the policy positions of its members and acts as an opposition to the majority party when it is in the minority. So we'll talk a little bit more about these in detail in the next few slides. All right, so let's talk about parties as organizations. So what is the function of a political party? We know that parties have varying ideologies, and we've already talked about that, but what do these parties do? So first, parties unite people with shared social, economic, and ideological goals. Okay, so if you're a member of the Democratic Party or a member of the Republican Party, then you probably have similar views, okay, similar values with the other people that belong to that party. Parties are going to find and support candidates to run for federal, state, and local offices. Parties are going to educate and mobilize voters. So they sponsor and organize activities that inform voters. They're going to recruit and train volunteers. And again, those party names are understood by voters to correspond to a core set of values. So if a candidate belongs to the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, you can kind of guess or assume where that individual stands on certain public policy issues. Parties also raise money and develop a media strategy to get their candidate elected. So this comes in terms of keeping voter information databases, conducting scientific polls, those get out the vote efforts, okay? So anything to try to get their candidate elected. And they also come up with party platforms for candidates to follow. So these are essentially those statements that explain the party's policy goals, so where the party stands on certain issues. All right, so let's talk about the party in the electorate, because parties do influence an election. So they influence those voter choices. Those broad set of political beliefs can be used as a label and shortcut in the voting booth. Okay, so if you feel like you most align with the Republican Party and those beliefs of the Republican Party, you might go in and vote for Republican candidates. The same goes with the Democratic Party. If you feel like you best align with their beliefs, you might go in and vote for those candidates. Party line voters are going to use the process of straight line voting, or voting for all of the candidates on the ballot from one party when marking their ballot. So essentially, if you are a party line voter, you are going to go in and vote for everyone on that ticket that is a member of the Republican Party, or everyone on that ticket that is a member of the Democratic Party. So again, remember, when there are elections, say it's a presidential election, you're not just voting for president, but also those local and state government elections as well. So everyone on the ballot from one party. Many Americans don't identify with a party because of dissatisfaction with the government. So some people are actually registered as independent instead of as a member of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. This is where that moderate electorate comes in. So in those campaigns, okay, candidates are trying to reach out to those moderates who can kind of vote either way because they don't identify with a party. In recent elections, voters have been less likely to support candidates of different parties in a single election, and this is a practice known as split ticket voting. So split ticket voting would be when you might vote for a few Republican candidates or a few Democratic candidates on the ballot. And again, this has happened less often more recently. So let's talk about the party in the government. At the national level, party members have to agree on that party platform, which is that set of positions and policy objectives. So this can be a source of controversy even within the party, okay? So for example, maybe in the Republican Party, there are members with views that are further right, okay? And then people who have views that are more in the middle, okay? So this can sometimes be a little controversial. It's easier to get policies passed when a party controls both houses of Congress and the presidency. So if you look here, this is from 2016, and you can see some of the party platforms. So things like immigration, voting rights, health care, climate, gun control. Those are just some different types of party platform issues. Again, when it comes to getting policies passed, a good example just happened here recently. So the House of Representatives, okay, is controlled by the Democratic Party. The Senate is split, and President Biden is a Democrat. So he was able to get that stimulus relief package passed a little more quickly, okay, because the Democratic Party holds much of the control. All right, party leadership. So the president generally chooses the chair of his or her national party. The party chair is going to raise money and really serves as the spokesperson of the party in the media. A lot of times they'll try to choose someone who is a little bit more moderate so that person can appeal to all members of the party. But the national party is only an advisory party over state and local parties. So there are state Republican parties as well as that whole national Republican Party, or state Democratic parties as well as the whole national party. So when it comes to recruiting and supporting candidates, parties are going to try to seek candidates who reflect the party's philosophy and who will draw voters to them. So obviously, when you are trying to find a candidate to run for office, especially in the case of Congress or the president, you want someone that people will want to vote for, okay? They got to have a little bit of charisma, and they've got to have other, background and, traits that people want to vote for. Parties are also going to look for people who can sharply contrast with their opponents and have a good chance of winning. So obviously you want to pick someone that has a good chance of winning the election. And parties are going to support their candidates through staff, public appearances, media, strategy, and public opinion polls. So again, they are going to conduct those polls. They have all of those get out the vote efforts. They might directly contribute to a campaign as far as financially. Okay, so they are supporting their candidates. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about the development of American politics. So for 150 years, most politicians have belonged to either the Republican or Democratic Party. Parties are going to seek to build a party coalition consisting of a group of voters who support that party over time. So in order for a party like the Republican Party or the Democratic Party to stay one of those major parties and have that major party status, they have to have those coalitions, so those groups of voters. And the important voting groups would include African Americans, women, blue-collar workers, Christian evangelicals, other groups that are similar. Control of the government has shifted between parties in periods of realignment, which is a major shift in allegiance to the political parties that's often driven by changes in issues that unite or divide voters. So realignment is really just the switching of party loyalty by those important voting groups like African American or women or blue-collar workers. So a good example of this would be during the Great Depression, when large numbers of traditionally Republican voters, including African Americans, started to vote Democrat in large numbers just because FDR had all of these ideas for how to come out of that Great Depression. Okay, so there was that realignment in those party coalitions. So periods of realignment may be ushered in by critical elections, which shift the balance of power between two parties. So this is when a major realignment of important voting groups takes place so that the party that had been weaker actually becomes the more dominant party. So again, that example from the Great Depression. So when many important voting groups are leaving that Republican Party to get behind FDR. Periods when one party wins most of the national elections are called party eras. So from 1969 to 2016, the government has often been divided, with one party controlling one or both houses of Congress, with a president from the opposing party. This is called an era of divided government. And we've seen this in recent history. So up until the 2020 election, the House of Representatives was controlled by Democrats, the Senate was controlled by Republicans, and then President Trump was a Republican. So you can see how this has kind of been an era of divided government. So here are some examples of those parties kind of sharing control. So for example, Truman was a Democratic president, but the Senate and the House were Republican. You can see Reagan here in his first term was a Republican, but Congress was divided. Okay, George W. Bush was a Republican, but he also had those split Congress. Okay, so you can see how this has kind of shifted between parties over time. And that's where we're going to stop with this video.